Imagine coming over after being invited to heal a country and to work for a country that just does not care for you. Welcome to Curriculum Conversations with your host, Lavinia Stennett. And today we're going to be talking about the Black women who were employed from the Caribbean by the largest employer of Black people in Europe. Of course, that is the NHS. We call the NHS here the National Health Service. We shorten it because it's quite long to say. But essentially, we're able to go to the hospital, I would say quote unquote for free. The reason I say quote unquote is because we're still taxed. We're still paying for it ultimately. But if I was to be rushed to the emergency room, I would not be coming out with a big ass bill, right? We're coming out not paying basically nothing up front. So when I think about the history of the NHS and the context of 1948, which is when Caribbean people were invited over from the Caribbean to help rebuild Britain, women came here as an extension of the colonial legacy to continue caring, laboring, and also nursing. And we went into roles, our ancestors went into roles, grandparents, great aunts, all these people, they went into roles where essentially they had to study, they had to get a qualification, if you like, to become a nurse. And you would think, okay, yeah, that's great. So what's the problem? Like, where's the institutional racism? And within that, you would have two definitions of nurses. You have SRNs and you have SEN. So SRN is a state registered nurse, and then you have an SEN, which is a state enrolled nurse. State enrolled nurses are very different from SRNs. Why? Well, essentially, SRNs would be seen as more qualified, that actually have, more prestige within the hospital. And essentially, SENs would not be able to use that qualification anywhere else. So you think if I was to just, I was a nurse, let's say I was a nurse and I was employed and then I, did an SEN, I would not be able to utilize my qualification in any other institution, even if I was to go back home. So I essentially would have studied for nothing. And then on top of that, I'm facing discrimination in my role. I'm being underpaid. I am given roles that are a lot less senior than what I actually deserve. And this was the case for thousands of Caribbean women who were actively sought after by the NHS. And you had over 54,000 vacancies at the time. Can you imagine? And within that, there was so much racism still. So when we're thinking about the impact and the legacy of our Black Caribbean women in this country, and the early foundations that we were able to provide to a service that ultimately many people would benefit from for free, we are at the backbone of that. And it's important that we recognize that, because sometimes we kind of skip over the fact that Caribbean people came over, they went into these roles, but when you go deeper, these are our grandparents, these are people that you would pass by on every day, and ultimately people who still work in these institutions, they are able to do their jobs because you had Black nurses from the Caribbean basically be able to set the foundations for that work, right? And all the labor and all the protests and the solidarities that were formed before that basically came from them. So they were the foundation of the NHS, and I should say they are the foundation, and that's really key. So I just want to big up all of them. And most importantly, when I'm thinking about some of the skills that they represent, we don't have some of these skills today, right? The education, the links, like even the fact that they were able to pay for their own qualifications through utilizing their networks, because the government wasn't going to fund them to do this. This is all about community at the heart of it. So that's something that the curriculum doesn't teach, and we should, because it tells us so much more. It paints a bigger story than just the fact that we came to work for Britain. And so what? So I'll leave you with that. Thank you for listening to Curriculum Conversations.